The first results are coming out, and the ANC winning 173 votes there. Freedom Front Plus, the next largest party, with 23. All right, perhaps not a huge surprise given the location, but I know that one group that's busy tracking and is already starting to load their model with this results is the CSIR, this Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and we're joined by the Strategic Partnership Manager, Dr. Ndumiso Cingo. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Peter.
All right, so the work of your model is going to start kicking in now already. The first results have come in. I mean, this is a tiny, tiny little story
Yes.
in terms of the bigger picture, but I guess it gives us an indication that things have started to happen. What do you start doing now?
Okay, so, there's only a handful of voting districts that have come in. And as you know, the country has about 23,000 of those. That's a very, very small percentage of voting districts. Our model begins to stabilize. For national elections, it stabilizes at about 5% of votes in. For local government election, it usually goes to about 10-15% of voting districts declared and results coming out before we can get a relatively stable outcome. However, we are starting to churn the numbers and trying to get to see what it'll be all over the place initially, but once it begins to stabilize, we'll have a little more to talk about. We also have been waiting for this moment.
All right, remind us again how your model works. I mean, what as these figures come in, it works on comparisons, doesn't it?
Well, it works on, it uses old results to group voting districts by similarity of voting patterns.
Right.
So we get about 20 different voting patterns, and those voting districts, we then bin them into those 20 different groups, what we call clusters.
Right.
Once we've done that, we remove the old election results, just keep the ones, the voting districts in their groups. Now, these results that you're getting now from the voting districts, we begin then to feed them into the model. So an example would be voting district A has changed sentiment from previous years to now by a certain percentage for party A, a certain percentage for party B. We then make the assumption that because it has been in a group that has similar voting patterns, its results will probably be the same for the rest of the, and then we project into. But as we get more and more results, the model gets better, and that's why I'm talking about the 5% to 10%, 15% or so stabilizing.
Compared to last year, timing-wise, what are we looking at? We were expecting the first batch of real results round about midnight. This has come early, but it's a tiny little voting station. So from the 2016, what sort of times are we looking at in terms of key markers for you?
So 2016 was a bit of an odd year for us in that the database that we were accessing to get the results was changed at the last minute, and our technical guys had to work really hard to get some results. But they got some reportable results at about 4 or 5 a.m. Now, we're hoping to get something useful. Of course, it also depends on the IEC, how quickly the counting gets done and the declarations get done. So we already are working at it. Next couple of hours, 3, 4, 5 hours maybe, we can get something that we can then begin to talk about and say.
Does your model factor in the fact that we've got much less in terms of people voting this time around?
So, well, the model does do a projection on the voter turnout. It does not depend so much on less people voting in order to work. The one thing I can say, though, is that the reason why the national elections, we only need a small sample of 5%. It's because the national elections, we're working with bigger numbers there. But with the local government elections, we are restricted to province by province, and therefore the numbers for each set is smaller, and thus it takes a bit longer to stabilize. So with lower turnout, it may affect the period that it takes to get stabilization of the projection.
Typically, what do these numbers tell you about the people on the ground? Does it say anything, or you guys just look at the statistics? Because you're putting them in clusters, and those clusters have got a meaning, don't they? I mean, it's not just random.
So we do not go into the analysis of what are people saying on the ground. I think your guests earlier on are the people who give us the interpretation. That is why it's always useful that when we give the results that the model says, the analysts can be there to begin to interpret and say, this is what appears to be emerging, and these are the reasons behind that, and can then better inform the public about those reasons. So we just do the numbers.
You're just the scientist. But I guess what the numbers do tell you, though, especially when there are similarities, is that whatever those issues were 2016 and the patterns remain the same, it's quite likely that we can infer it's because of the same reasons, by and large.
You could infer that. What we understand is that, so the grouping of the voting districts by voting pattern or profile of voting says that across the country there are different factors that influence people, and those factors then results even in far-flung voting districts from one another, some of them being very similar, and therefore you could assume that the influences are the same. And hence we say, and we make the assumption with the model that if there is a change from the previous to the current election for a particular voting district or a few voting districts that belong to a particular group that has similar voting patterns, then we project and we make the assumption that the rest will also behave the same.
So does it? I suppose you're just looking at the numbers, not the faces with those numbers, in terms of, is that person 19? Is that person voting for the first time? Is that person 55 and this is his third time around? Or the model kind of works itself out on that basis?
So remember that nobody is supposed to know who voted how and what party they chose. So that is completely blind to everyone, to us, the IEC, to even the analysts. The analysts, in fact, are the ones that give us insights from having studied a lot of these patterns.
All right. And you're confident that this is going to deliver much as it did in previous local government elections? I mean, last time I remember there were some people that even questioned you, but you came out smiling because you were pretty accurate in the end.
So based on the history, I mean, since 1999 this has been applied, and every year there's been improvements made. For example, taking into account new parties that had not been there before, and thus we've been able to improve accuracy of prediction of even those parties. In the first instance, when we had the likes of COPE coming in strongly, etc., at the time when they came in, the prediction was a bit wobbly for that, but then later on we were able to factor those in. So yes, we do look at those factors.
Is there any indication, I suppose again, we're sort of preempting, but based on what happened last time, are you predicting, are you seeing any chance of, again, closely contested areas like the metros that we saw last time?
So a big focus for us this year in terms of reporting is going to be on the metros, as we did also previously. And I think for us it's also ease of reporting because, as I said, there are so many voting districts across the country. and so many, over almost 300 municipalities, etc. So in order to share results, news with the public more efficiently, we do focus on the big metros, but we then also do a bit of further analysis to look at areas where there have been issues that have flared up recently, to see if we focus on those, what are the emerging, what is the model saying are the emerging trends.
All right, so Dr. Ndumiso Cingo, we're going to have to leave it there for the time being. We're going to wait until your model has been fed a bit more data, and hopefully a little bit later on you can start to give us your early thoughts. Certainly there won't be predictions by any stretch of the imagination, but it gives us an idea of perhaps which way we're starting to tread. But thanks so much indeed for your insights, and we look forward for more analysis later.
Thank you for having me.
All right.